Hey nerds, it's Ty the TV Guy here, and it's time for a full recap of seasons 1 through 4 of Stranger Things. As we all know and have unfortunately experienced, the wait for season 5 has been long, and even that is a bit of an understatement. Stranger Things 4 released in two parts on May 27th of 2022 and July 1st of 2022. Stranger Things 5, the final season, releases in just about a month now on November 26th, 2025. This means it will be 1,244 days between Season 4 and Season 5 from Netflix when it's all said and done. It goes without saying that this wait is almost unimaginable for a TV show, and despite all the excuses that exist for why this is, such as the writer's strike that delayed filming and the fact that these episodes are expected to be largely movie length and movie quality, it's still objectively a bit long. Nevertheless, the time is almost here to finally enjoy this universe and the characters within it one more time, and I don't know about you guys, but I still can't wait to see how they defeat Vecna and hopefully find triumph in this final season as a group. And even more so, I'm just excited to see the smaller character moments that are always so special in this show as well. Anyway, so that you can best enjoy this final season and hit the ground running upon its release in late November, let me refresh you a bit on what our characters have gone through in the first 4 seasons. Before I start, I encourage you to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel for more Stranger Things content, as I'll be having reviews, rankings, discussions, and theories leading up to and especially upon the release of the final season, and I'd love to have you all with me for the last ride. This video is going to be part 1 of 4, and so I'm going to focus specifically on Season 1 in this video, but there will be 3 more following this. Okay, so it's November 6th, 1983. We start with the 4 boys, Mike, Dustin, Lucas, and Will in that order. We start with them playing a game of Dungeons & Dragons, in which they're knee-deep in an hours-long campaign, as they call it. The fun-filled night comes to an end after a 10-hour campaign that they couldn't quite finish, and Will lets Mike know that he did indeed roll a 7, saying, "The Demogorgon, it got me." Of course, the foreshadowing of this opening scene is real and quickly comes to fruition, as Will encounters a real-life monster, or a Demogorgon as we come to know it, on his bike ride home from the Wheeler house. Despite his best efforts to get home and evade the Demogorgon, we're left with him vanishing in the shed outside his house. As the Byers, Joyce, and her oldest son Jonathan wake up the next day for breakfast, they come to realize Will is nowhere to be found and he may not have returned home last night. After a phone call to Mrs. Wheeler and some frantic questioning of Jonathan, worry sets in for Joyce, and Will is officially missing. We also get to know our other characters, including Nancy Wheeler, who has a red-headed best friend Barb and a budding relationship with the king of Hawkins High, Steve Harrington. Joyce, now concerned for Will's safety, brings her concerns to the Hawkins police station where Chief Jim Hopper enters the picture. After some waffling and borderline insensitive commentary, Hopper soon realizes that Joyce is for real and he may actually have a concerning case on his hands. We also get to meet Eleven, a frightened, easily startled little girl with a shaved head that shows up at Benny's Burgers and tries to slink away some food from his kitchen. After some questioning, Benny calls for social services, a decision he would soon regret because the lady shows up and kills him point blank. For reasons unknown at this point, it's clear Eleven is a high-priority escapee, and she continues her evasion of her oppressors by seemingly killing a few men before fleeing the scene. The 3 remaining boys after Will's disappearance are restless and worried for their friend, and despite orders from their parents to stay home, they go out looking for him in the pouring rain. When they explore the woods near Mirkwood, the street Will went missing, they do find someone, but it isn't the face they're expecting to see. Instead, it's Eleven, breathing heavy and soaked from the ongoing downpour. After some intense discussion between Mike, Dustin, and Lucas, they decide it probably isn't smart to keep Eleven around even though she seems scared and in need of help. However, Eleven refuses to go along with their plan in which she would need to essentially turn herself in, so Mike then goes along with her hiding out in his basement for the time being. The following day when they explore the rest of the house, Elle, as he has now endearingly nicknamed her, points to Will in a picture, giving Mike hope that she can help in the hunt for Will. When Mike brings this new information to his friends, Lucas still wants to tell Mrs. Wheeler, but Elle denies him the opportunity by slamming the door as he attempts to leave Mike's room, showcasing her powers for the first time. Hopper and other Good Samaritans continue in the main search for Will, but their efforts are to no avail early on. Barb and Nancy attend a get-together at Steve's house, and after the party turns in a direction that makes her uncomfortable, Barb decides to leave and Nancy declines the offer to go with her. Subsequently, we see Barb go missing in an instant out by the pool, which a nearby Jonathan taking pictures in the woods somehow doesn't see. As Barb is pulled into the Upside Down, she screams for help from Nancy, but unfortunately it's too late at this point. She's the newest victim of the Demogorgon's wrath. Back to Joyce, who it's fair to say is already losing it at this point, at least in the eyes of the other characters. At every turn, she begins to think she hears Will, is getting calls from him, and that he is even speaking to her through the lights. The trajectory of his mother's mental well-being is concerning to Jonathan, and he encourages her to get some rest. For the kids, it's time for Operation Mirkwood. Now that 11 has identified Will as hiding, the boys want to look for and save Will from the Demogorgon. Steve finds out about the pictures Jonathan took of him and Nancy, wasting no time to make Jonathan pay for his actions by breaking his highly coveted camera. Nancy gathers the scraps from the pictures Steve tore apart. Elsewhere, Hopper's detective work intensifies as he visits Hawkins' lab and notices some inconsistencies in their story regarding the night Will went missing, particularly the absence of rain on the tape he's shown from that night. Hopper now knows Hawkins' lab is lying, and he is more determined than ever to get to the bottom of it. After some cute dialogue between Mike and Elle on their new adventure through the woods, Episode 3 comes to quite a climax as Joyce communicates more clearly through the lights with Will, this time painting out the entire alphabet on the living room wall to allow him to communicate more clearly. In 2 short but telling responses, Will responds to Joyce by saying he's right here and tells her to run, and the latter message is immediately followed by a creature ripping through the wall towards Joyce. As she frantically runs away from her house, the boys, 11 and Hopper, are all simultaneously at the quarry where authorities pull a body out of the water. It appears to be Will, and all involved are absolutely devastated to see his apparent fate. Hopper arrives at the Byers' house and tells Joyce of the news, which of course is met by a great resistance from Joyce, especially considering her recent contact with Will. Mike is also devastated and scolding 11 for misleading him to believe Will was still alive, but she changes the tone by channeling Will singing his favorite song, Should I Stay or Should I Go, through the walkie. Mike is once again hopeful and contacts Lucas and Dustin to reconsider the possibilities. Lucas remains critical after the sight of Will's body just the night before. Regardless, they devise yet another plan, this one centered around disguising Elle in Nancy's old dress to sneak her into their school to use the AV radio set, which could likely give 11 a more powerful source to channel Will. Nancy grows more concerned about Barb's disappearance and thinks something bad may have happened to her at this point, especially after the supposed faceless creature she saw on Steve's property when she went to look for Barb. Joyce visits the morgue meanwhile, and let's just say she left unconvinced that the provided body was actually her son. Though Hopper initially thinks Joyce is crazy and in her head, many events continue to unfold in the middle of the season here to further convince him that the conspiracy is real and runs deep. He has a run-in with a man at the bar who had heavy involvement in the Will Byers body recovery, talks to Larry about the shady autopsy practices from the men from quote-unquote state, and starts to connect dots that support this being a possible massive cover-up. I'll get back to Hopper in a moment, but the events at Hawkins Middle School are heating up. Elle makes Troy the bully pee his pants after Mike confronts him for mocking Will, and then Elle is also able to successfully use her powers to channel Will talking to his mother through the AV radio. This use of her powers overexerts her and fries the radio as the boys carry her away from the commotion. Hopper brings his suspicions to an end in pursuit of clarity, showing up to the morgue and pulling Will's body out of the freezer, and as you may remember, the body is indeed a fake. Hopper, now shocked and fully immersed in the hunt to save Will, up to Hawkins' lab and breaks in with the intent to break Will out. While his venture was somewhat successful and he saw many things the people at Hawkins' lab wish he hadn't, he does inevitably get knocked out by some lab soldiers and return to his trailer like nothing ever happened. He woke up and instantly searched for a hidden mic, which he found planted after fervent searching. Much of Episode 5 consists of the boys gaining a better understanding of what may be taking place with Will, as they refer to the Veil of Shadows as a source of comparison for the potential whereabouts of Will in the quote-unquote Upside Down. After the funeral for Will, they further look into how to find Will by asking their brilliant science teacher, Mr. Clark, how to theoretically travel to another dimension. Dustin puts the final pieces together back at the Wheeler household when he discovers an error in their compasses, indicating they are deflecting to a greater power rather than true north. That assumption points toward the likelihood of a gate, and the compasses could lead them straight to this potential gate between worlds. For Jonathan and Nancy, the next step after the funeral is to take down the monster that they now believe is real. Nancy turns down Steve's proposal to go on a date to get their mind off things, instead going to practice her shot with Jonathan and later going to hunt it in the woods. At the junkyard, the boys are confused why the compass is directing them in a circle. Lucas believes the cause is 11, who he claims has been acting quieter than usual. And his suspicions were correct, as he comes to find blood on her jacket, indicating her use of powers to mess up the compasses. Elle did this since she was scared to return to the lab where she experienced such trauma and has actively been trying to run away from, but Lucas and the gang were confused as to why she would jeopardize their mission. Lucas and Mike argue, Mike being rather defensive of 11, which drives Elle to throw Lucas off Mike with her powers in a moment of distress and confusion. Lucas wakes up after a brief unconsciousness and stomps home angrily, while Elle has seemingly vanished in the wind as well. Nancy and Jonathan encounter a wounded deer in the woods, and it coincidentally leads them right to the monster they've been seeking. After Nancy finds her way into the Upside Down and narrowly escapes, Jonathan stays the night since neither of them want to be alone at the moment. Steve stops by to check up on Nancy and sees Jonathan in her room. Yikes. The next morning, Nancy declares her determination to take down the monster and save both Will and Barb. She theorizes that the monster is a predator drawn to blood, so their plan must exploit that condition. Hopper tells Joyce he may have been chasing the wrong kid this whole time as he describes the things he saw when breaking into the lab. This leads him and Joyce to track down Terry Ives and learn more about her alleged stolen daughter. The boys look to squash their beef after the recent events at the junkyard, but Lucas refuses to shake Mike's hand knowing Elle is still in the party, so he embarks on his own journey to find Will instead. 11 goes shopping for waffles, while Jonathan and Nancy go shopping for monster hunting supplies, as they call it. After they leave the store, they come to see that Steve and his friends have spray painted the local movie theater with negative things to say about Nancy, to say the least. Nancy confronts Steve in a nearby alleyway, and eventually he and Jonathan get tangled up in a fistfight after Steve says some pretty insensitive things about Jonathan's family. Jonathan wins, but his mom is disappointed to hear he's at the police station and trying to fight the evil monster on his own. With Lucas scouting out the lab, Mike and Dustin get trailed by the school bullies when walking through the woods. They run for as long as they can until they end up in a standoff near a cliff at the local quarry, where Troy threatens to cut Dustin's teeth out if Mike doesn't jump. Though admirable, Mike foolishly jumps, and he's only saved by Elle showing up just in time and lifting him back to safety. She then breaks Troy's arm and scares the bullies away, and the three friends embrace on the rocky path. Episode 7 picks up with immediate action as the kids' return back to the Wheeler house is short-lived. Lucas warns over the walkie that the bad men are coming, and 11 locks eyes momentarily with Dr. Brenner in Mike's front yard before they bike away. After meeting back up with Lucas, the Hawkins lab vans converge on the crew, and 11 exercises one of the most epic uses of her powers ever by flipping the van to save the day. Lucas apologizes for how he's treated Elle, and he and Mike also reconcile their differences. Now, a helicopter and a search crew on the ground look for Mike and the kids, while Hopper and Nancy ask Mike where they're located. Eventually, Mike discloses their location, which enables Hopper to show up just in time to save them from being captured by the armed lab men. After some discussion back at the Byers house, the next course of action is to create a sensory deprivation tank for 11 to focus on her powers and find Will and Barb in the Upside Down, ideally. Eventually, they set up the pool at the school gymnasium, and Elle starts searching for them. When she comes across Barb, she frantically repeats "gone," indicating Barb is dead in the Upside Down. However, she's able to find Will still alive in Castle Byers in the Upside Down. He pleads for them to hurry before Elle loses contact and Will's castle is shown being destroyed by the monster. Hopper and Joyce go back to break into the lab for the second time, but this time they're immediately caught. Nancy and Jonathan branch off to once again pursue their mission of luring and taking down the Demogorgon, while the rest of the kids stay at the school. Joyce, enraged at Dr. Brenner for being the mastermind behind the cover-up of her son's disappearance, talks with him and loses her patience. Dr. Brenner instead tries to level with Hopper, which is probably smart, who agrees to terms regarding 11. If he tells Brenner where 11 is, Brenner must leave the other kids alone and allow them to search for and hopefully find Will. Dr. Brenner agrees for 2 reasons, probably. 1, 11 is and always has been his top priority in this situation, and 2, he doesn't believe they'll find Will anyway, which would create a massive problem for them if it happened. Anyway, the deal is done, so Hopper and Joyce suit up and head into the Upside Down. After a brief moment of peace and quiet where Dustin searches for chocolate pudding and Mike kisses Elle, the agents from Hawkins' lab show up to the school and send the kids into a panic yet again. The kids run away for a while but eventually get caught by Brenner and his muscle men. Elle, the badass she is, squeezes like 6 of their brains and kills them instantaneously, but this immense use of her powers exhausts her and she collapses. Brenner is there to pick her up a few moments later and wants to take her home, but a woozy 11 responds with one simple word: bad. Elsewhere, Jonathan and Nancy cut their hands to draw the Demogorgon to their blood, and the plan works. Once Steve gets in the mix, he returns heroically to battle the Demogorgon after initially fleeing in panic. Though not exactly how they drew it up, the plan generally works as they manage to trap and burn the monster. As Hopper and Joyce travel throughout the Upside Down in search of Will, we follow a combination of their search for Will and parallels to Hopper's tragic experiences related to his daughter in the past. It's revealed through a series of flashbacks that his daughter had a rough bout with leukemia, and ultimately she tragically passed away. In a moving intertwining of the 2 stories in Hopper's present and past, he uses the memory of his late daughter to fuel his search for and resuscitation of Will. He knew Joyce could not lose her son and go through what he did, and luckily she didn't have to thanks to his efforts. They're able to save Will after some CPR, and the relief is palpable. As for what happens simultaneously at the high school, the Demogorgon, after seemingly taking out Brenner, keyword seemingly, finds the kids and threatens them. With 11 barely alert and sapped of her powers, Lucas pulls out the almighty wrist rocket to try and take out the Demogorgon. On his third shot, Lucas seemingly strikes the Demogorgon just right and sends it to the back of the classroom. However, it's revealed seconds later that it's really 11 using the last bit of her powers, and this sends her over the edge, as when she takes out the Demogorgon, it also teleports her to the Upside Down. Before doing so, she looks back to the boys and says, "Goodbye, Mike," and it's the last we see of 11 in Season 1. This really concludes the action for Season 1, as later on we see Will wake up in the hospital and return home for Christmas festivities, as well as we see Hopper leave a mysterious Eggo waffle in the woods in a little container. Of course, this points to the probability that he knows 11 is still out there somewhere. But there you have it, guys. That is my full and detailed recap of Season 1 of Stranger Things. Once again, like this video and subscribe to the channel for my future recaps, which will be coming out over the next couple weeks, and for content related to Season 5 as we await it just over a month from now. Until next time, it's Ty the TV Guy out. Peace.